Hi, I want to thank you for joining me once again on the program. Today I'm going to bring a teaching that it's about two men, but they were both wrong. Until God intervened, they were both wrong. But let's just see what happened once God intervened in these two men's lives. One will be in the Old Testament, one in the New Testament. Let's see what happens. Let's begin in the book of Esther, way back in the Old Testament. And I want to read about a man named Haman. And I'm only going to read, chapter 3. I'm going to read the first 3 verses. Esther chapter 3, New King James Version. After these things, King Ahasuerus promoted Haman, the son of Ammedatha, the Agagite, and advanced him and set his seat above all the princes who were with him. And all the king's servants who were within the king's gate bowed and paid homage to Haman, for so the king had commanded concerning him. But Mordecai would not bow or pay homage. Now Mordecai was a Jew. And if you look back at the lineage of Haman and then the lineage of Mordecai, the lineage of Haman goes back to King Agag. And King Agag and his nation were to be annihilated. They were to be killed, according to God, who spoke to Samuel to get rid of that people. Well, why? Well, they were so totally against God. We know that King Saul did not completely get rid of the entire group of Agagites, but they did kill, through Samuel the prophet, King Agag was killed. So here we go down the lineage, and we're at Haman. Haman has held hatred in his heart all these years for the Jews. He has held nothing but bitterness and hatred and revenge year after year. And so he saw his chance. And I find it interesting. What he did was, he said, verse 9 of chapter 3, "If it pleases the king, let a decree be written that they be destroyed, and I will pay 10,000 talents of silver into the hands of those who do the work, to bring it into the king's treasures." He was so much in this business of revenge that he was willing to pay. But he said, let a decree be written. And we know, if you read the book of Esther, a decree was written. A decree to annihilate the Jews. I'm not about teaching the book of Esther today. I wanted us to see one man in this whole piece, Haman and hatred. Now, if we were to go over to the book of Acts, chapter 9, I want to read the first 3 verses there of another man also called Saul. Not King Saul of the Old Testament, but now we see another man named Saul. Then Saul, still breathing threats and murder against the disciples of the Lord, went to the high priest and asked letters from him to the synagogues of Damascus, so that if he found any who were of the way, in other words, followers of Christ, whether men or women, he might bring them bound to Jerusalem. As he journeyed, he came near Damascus, and suddenly a light shone around about him from heaven. There was an interaction that Saul, later we know as Paul, but that Saul had an interaction with Jesus at that moment. And there was a light that shone from heaven and a voice, Jesus' voice to him. Saul, he had received letters from the synagogue. He had a decree that permitted him to bring the Christians bound or killed. Anyone that would be in the way, the Christian. Now, this particular Saul thought he was doing a great service for God. Why, this is against the Old Testament. These Christians, they got to go. We can't have this in our synagogues. I mean, they're disturbing all we've known. And so Saul thought he was helping God by being this murderer, by being this one that would drag in all the Christian Jews. He was helping God. Now, the difference between the two men, one was hatred and revenge against God Almighty. He didn't care. He was mad. And here was one that was hatred and revenge of the Christian because he thought he was helping God. Now, on the surface, both were murdering and consenting to murder. Both had letters. Haman had it. He was very sneaky about it, and he had the king to write the letter that would ultimately be a cause for annihilation of all the Jewish race. But there was a letter, a decree written. Saul he went to the priest and the synagogues, and he got a letter. He was very upfront about it, and he got letters that would allow him to drag those Christians into jails. So both had a letter. Both had a cause. One was hatred, and one was helping God. There was an intervention by God on both. And as I said, I'm not dwelling on Esther. But what I am dwelling on is that when God intervenes, it's the inner person that he's looking at. There were two that had done similar acts, but with very different heart. God looks at the heart. Now, where am I going with this today? Maybe you have messed up something pitiful. Your life is not the way you want it to go. Your heart is not in it even. But you find yourself almost like you've got your letter written and you don't know how to get off this road. God knows how to intervene in your life. In fact, if we go over to Acts chapter 9, verse 11. So the Lord said to him, this was Ananias, "Arise and go to the street called Straight, and inquire at the house of Judas for one called Saul of Tarsus. For behold, he is praying." You see, God knows your heart, and that's what he looks at. Whatever your actions have been is not what God is concerned about. He's concerned about the heart. Where is your heart today? Ananias was awakened and told by God, get up and you go to the street called Straight, and I love that. That's a whole sermon by itself. And there you'll find a man named Saul of Tarsus in this house. You go to him and pray for him. For behold, he is praying. God will send people to you when you begin to turn your heart over to him. He will bring Spirit-filled believers to you to pray with you, to guide you back onto a road, a path that you can walk straight on, a path of life, and out of that path that you're currently in, the one you don't want to be in, the one your heart is crying out and says, help me, Father. Saul was on his knees. He wasn't eating. He was fasting and praying, begging God, just forgive me and I'll do whatever you want me to do. He had a sincere heart. He was sincerely wrong before, but God showed him the truth. And once he saw the truth, he knew he had to ask God to forgive him, and God sent help immediately. With Haman, he never asked for forgiveness, and his heart was never corrected, because he had an evil heart, one bound on vengeance. If your heart is tied up in vengeance, I pray that this message today will help you. Haman was hanged. Saul was promoted and given the name of Paul, and became one of God's great warriors. The choice is always ours. It's that inward heart that God looks at no matter what we've done. The road ahead is the one we have yet to choose. God is always there waiting for us to turn a heart around, and He will immediately send help, even through videos like today, and let you know He's always and will always look at the heart, and all actions past can be forgiven if we get on our knees before God and ask Him. Today's message was for maybe someone that thinks they can't start over. Maybe someone that thinks there's no hope for me now. I'm in this too deep. Nobody was in it more deeply than Saul. He had even letters from the high priest. And now suddenly he became not only a Christian, but a defender of the Christians. God knows how to turn everything around, no matter how it looks right now. So I pray over you today for courage. Courage to let go of what you now know, because God will reveal it to be wrong. And let your heart lean and follow God. Let it lean in on Him and follow Him with all your heart. And God will take care of the rest. Keep liking and sharing and telling a friend and leaving comments. Oh, how we love those comments. God bless you and thank you.